everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's me and Nate back at it again. It's February 28th, coming into my birthday month. Coming into looking down the barrel of 40 for myself. So,
congratulations! Happy birthday! Happy early birthday!
Yeah, I haven't had my existential crisis yet. Maybe I'll skip out on it this year. We'll see. I normally am not one to give too much of a care about my age. So I still feel fairly healthy and like that my body's not completely falling apart. So I figure I'm good. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I definitely am. It's going to be very interesting just because I know that there's some undisclosed but significant changes coming in our lives, you know, as regards where we live and all this other stuff. And so like by the time that I hit 40, I know that my life is going to be very different than it is now. And that's cool though. Like I genuinely don't mind. Like, I try to approach it that, you know, try not to make the same mistake over and over again. Like I can't be so bold as to claim that I don't make the same mistake twice, but I'll try not to make it 1,000 times. And I suppose that's, you know, all you can really hope for, if you want to call it progress.
Yeah, it's, you know, I feel like what's important is that whatever age you get to, you're comfortable there. Like yeah. I don't ever want to be, you know, I worry like my father is in his 80s and I worry like, well, when I'm in my 80s, am I going to be as like chill and nonchalant as my father? And like maybe like he was, you know, 40 years old once upon a time too. So I'm hoping that, you know, as it continues on, and my dad's still in really great shape too, still has all of his hair. It's fantastic. I got fantastic genetics, man. It's pretty great. So you know, just so we'll see. I'm planning a little surprise for everybody on Twitter. Something I'm going to get done and share with everybody once my birthday comes around. It's at the end of the month, so keep an eye out for stuff like that. But you know, otherwise, I do occasionally wrestle with the whole. You know, would a 40-year-old man be posting this shit to Twitter? And considering I am soon to be a 40-year-old man posting that shit to Twitter, the answer is yes. Take that what you will. Maybe it's maybe you should stop following me because it's embarrassing. But God willing, you'll be here one day too. So for all of our younger listeners out there, you should hope to be like me at the age of 40, where I'm going. Whatever.
I mean, I certainly think that it's better to do that than to be really hung up on trying to prove something because you feel as though you haven't measured up or there's, you know, unfinished business as regards previous stages of your life. I mean, not to make this sound like a self-help podcast, but there is an extent to which it can be tempting to kind of get lost in the possibilities of either like what you think you might be doing or what you should have done in the past. And that will sometimes make people really, I don't know, unhappy and feel as though it's like this meme that you'll see shared of people, you know, looking back on photos of themselves being like, oh, wow, you know, things were so great back then. What an idyllic time. And that was the exact same thing they were doing during that idyllic time. They were like, wow, that sucked really bad. You know, you're constantly looking backwards or looking forwards, either, you know, anxiety or weird regret. And I mean, everyone's going to have some tendencies they have to try to work through. I just feel like, for me at least, I've been very lucky that there have been some positive developments since, let's say, the beginning of 2022 in my personal life, like in my physical health, in my general sort of approach to things. And I'm not going to say, oh, it was sheer willpower. I started going back to therapy, and that helped a lot as far as like trying to talk through things and realizing that there were a lot of things that I perceived as problems that were just like me failing to take the first step, and the first step wasn't really even that hard. And I don't know, did I ever tell you about my sort of breakthrough moment on this, Francis?
I don't know, maybe. Tell us all about it.
So we rent our house. We're never going to be homeowners in the United Kingdom, and that's fine with me. But the house has a lot of fucked up work. We've talked about this before with me having to vacate for a while and so on and so forth. And there's also just a lot of like slipshod thrown together stuff, to include what were two very large fake terracotta planters out front that were like, they were broken. The plastic was broken. And so like dirt would always spill from them. And they constantly had weeds. They were more or less unsalvageable. Because they were there, I couldn't use the space that other houses on the block use in front of their houses for like storing the bins, as the Brits say, like your garbage can, your recycling bin. And so I was just like, I was constantly, every time I walked out of the house, I was fucking annoyed by these stupid bins, or rather these stupid planters. And finally, one day after having this discussion about like the general concept of taking the first step, or like setting even a really small time hack, like I feel bad that I'm not writing, so I'll set a time hack and I'll just write for 5 minutes. Because even if I just do 5 minutes, that's at least an accomplishment and it won't feel like it's weighing on me. So we'd have this general topic conversation. And then one day, I heard the knock from the post slot, because most doors in Britain have like a slot in them for you to put mail through, because people don't have mailboxes here. And I opened it up, and there was this it's like this chain thing called Check a Trade, and it's just like, I don't know how you get on it. It's sort of like an Angie's List thing, but for local communities, of different services that are available that businesses are offering. And one of them was removals. And I was just like, oh, fuck it, dude. I'm just going to call this guy. Called up the removals company. I was like, hey, I've got these 2 plant potter things, like pot planters. They're pieces of shit, and I just need to get rid of them. And the guy's like, I can be there in an hour. And he just whips ass down our block as this Romanian dude with like the world's most chaotically smashed cell phone, driving this flatbed truck. And we both get some serious deep squats in lifting these potters and putting them up. I keep saying potters, planters, putting these planters into the truck. But then, I paid him cash and he was gone, and that was it. They were done. And I was like, dude, from start to finish, like it didn't even take him an hour. It was like 50 minutes from me making the phone call to the problem being solved. And I was just like, I have sat here in fucking agony about how much I hate this shit and stuff like these problems for so long. And like actually taking a step really isn't that hard. And it was the weirdest thing, man. Like it wasn't like getting on medication. It wasn't stopping or starting anything. It was well before I really got into improving my diet and exercise and stuff like that the way that I have been recently. But it was just this weird moment, like, oh wait, that really wasn't hard at all.
The hardest, it's just, for me, it's just like the hardest part of going to exercise or going to work out is putting on my workout clothes. Like if it's cold, I haven't been running, but once it warms back up again. Yeah, once I start running again, it's gonna, lunchtime is when I usually run during the day at when I'm at work, and I'll go in and I'll just be like, do I really want to do it? And the thing is as soon as the spandex and the running shirt or whatever and my shoes go on, that's it. I'm good. The run is nothing. I can run. I'll do a 5K, no problem. But that initial like getting yourself there is very hard. It's just literally every other millennial in the world has problems with making a phone call, even though the phone call is the easiest thing possible. It's just there's a level of uncertainty there of am I gonna encounter a phone tree? Am I gonna have to talk to a person? Am I gonna sound like an idiot? Like I've been calling electricians because the new electric range that we have in our kitchen that we've been building needs a 220 volt. And my wife won't let me install it, which is probably smart. But I gotta hire a guy and I gotta get quotes. And electricians and a lot of tradespeople, especially if they work for smaller companies or if they're self-employed, they don't have a website where you can just get a quote. You got to call a guy. And usually you're calling a guy who's already on another job currently, who is just like kind of throwing some numbers at you and stuff. And it can be a hard hurdle to get over, but yeah, sometimes that, and then when you realize, like you said, it's just like it took an hour, I paid X amount of dollars for it, and then it was gone, and this isn't going to bother me anymore. And you have to, and you know what, you can realize that every week you can have that realization, and then it slips out of your mind again. But it definitely is the first kind of step is always the hardest.
Well, it's just been weird because I'm not going to say that literally every problem was solved, but I started approaching problems that way, and that like if it felt as though I couldn't psych myself up enough to do them in a certain moment, I would find a date and time that I would, but I would kind of hold myself to that. And slowly but surely, like issues have gotten solved. Recently, friend of the show, co-producer Irish Thomas O'Mahony, came over, and I was like, I'll make dinner. I wanted to pay him, but he wouldn't let me. You can cut that out if you want to, Tom, but he wouldn't let me pay him to help with yard work. And I was just so glad we got it done because it was like 3 hours between the two of us, and all the stuff that would have been getting worse and worse and worse. And like as it warms up, getting even shittier, like it's just done. Like I'll still have to do some garden maintenance for sure, but I really appreciated the help. But also just like, in a way, Tom being like, hey, this is the only weekend I can really do this, so we should just do it on the weekend of the 18th. And then us just getting it done like that. In a way, that weird little forcing function helped just make sure that it happened. And now it's done, or at least a big chunk of what's going to have to be done over the course of the year is complete. And I thought about this too. There's a part of me that's like, is this one of the reasons why many people who were in the military struggle on the outside, or at least for a while, to adapt? Because it's just, there's so many more variables, and the military is like the boundaries are so circumscribed, like what you can do, what you can't do, how it's done, how you're told to do it. And it's like, yeah, if you, like many people, do well when there's a forcing function, that's like all the military ever is. And like, I hate having people breathing down my neck, but I think the concept of how the deadlines work and like the whole task and purpose, time hack kind of thing, the way that's so ingrained, that doesn't really, and you know this, you were a reservist and you've been working a civilian job for forever, but that doesn't really exist in the civilian world in the same way. And so it took me a really long time to kind of like, for lack of a better term, unfuck my own processes, because I was so accustomed to there being a hard backstop, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you're correct. Like the way that we do things, we did things in the military, and the way the military does operate is very different from the public sector, and from the private sector. And it definitely has its ups and downs, but
yeah, I'm not trying to say that it's better, but it's just more like that was all I knew as an adult. And I sort of thought of myself as someone who was good at their job as an adult. And I had to go through some phases of not being good at my job because the skills that I learned and the sort of approaches that I learned didn't really apply, or rather the normal boundaries and the normal strictures that would kind of govern that and keep me in check weren't there. And like, if you've only ever bowled with the gutter guards on, you'll be a great fucking bowler. And then the first time you do it without, you're like, oh wait, that can happen.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of taking those first steps, and try. And you know what? If you need a little bit of encouragement, hey, you got this, man. Or let me take that. Hey, you got this. It's fine.
Yeah, you got this. It's your dads,
right.
And we're saying you can conceive of us as your gay dads or your straight dads, however you want. But we're just telling you got this. And we too have struggled, and we too have come up with solutions that work.
And continue to struggle. Like, I'm not going to sit here like, that's it. 40 years old. I've done it. Like, as I said, I'm in the middle of a kitchen remodel, and like the biggest parts of it are done, but we have to take stuff back to IKEA. We have to get some new hardware. We got to put the floor down. I got to get the stove hooked up. And it's just so hard sometimes to be like, I spent all last week working on the kitchen. I took 3 days off of work, and busting my ass with a handyman, to get it all taken care of. And then, Thursday and Friday, I was still running around doing stuff, for the kitchen and everything. And it's tempting to just be like, I mean, it's good enough, but I've got a plywood floor at the moment. And I had to spend the time, doing all these things. And it is still a struggle at times to just be like, I don't want to fucking do this. Look, the sink works and I have a toaster oven. I can survive like this. And I don't have to. We can get a good, nice functioning kitchen. And it is like today before we recorded, because we're recording noon my time in Central Standard, but I've been on the phone with electricians. It's like, I got to get this done. And if my wife can't, she doesn't have the time to, so it's got to fall on me. I can't push this off on somebody else. She's got her own bullshit that she's got to catch up with. So it is, just understand that, like, even though we sound like we have things kind of figured out, like Nate and I both have, our fears and our concerns, and the shit that holds us back as well. So, nobody's perfect, and it's okay if you're struggling. it happens. We all do.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I, on Thursday, did a bunch of work getting things put back together because our upstairs, our bedroom and the room that we were using as an office had been totally covered in dust. I mean, the builders did a good job covering things up with dust sheets, but there's only so much that those things can do because, we were 100% just had to go through, and it was like, all right, there is no way to get around this. You have to dust and vacuum every surface in these rooms. And so on Thursday, I handled our bedroom because we were going to be moving back into that room. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I finished the office. But I got to be honest with you, like, it's kind of amazing how much you can smoke yourself doing that without really feeling as though you're doing very much work. The office made sense to be a smoker because my wife, during COVID, acquired a bunch of weight sets because we couldn't go to the gym. And so I had to move the weight rack, clean all the weight rack because there's dust fucking everywhere, and pick up every single weight, clean every weight, and then move it onto the rack and get it positioned, and then clean all of the exercise mats, the yoga pillows, the barbell, the barbells, the kettlebells, the actual weight bar, all this stuff. Then, I had to clean the floors. I had to put the wardrobe back. I had to remount the safety brackets, had to move one of the bookshelves, clean all the books, clean all the shelves themselves, clean up all this garbage, sort a lot of old stuff, consolidate stuff into boxes because there was just too much stuff had accumulated and we need to pare things down. I want to say it was like maybe earlier in the week, I actually moved my desk downstairs. So just took the drawers out, took the legs off, moved it downstairs, set it up. So I have my own kind of office workspace now, and it works a lot better. And, I was thinking to myself, because yesterday I was just like, I had all these grand designs of exercise that I wanted to do. And I was so fucking exhausted. And I even asked Cynthia, I was like, why am I just don't get it. Like, what in the fuck is going on? And she's like, you basically got a huge, like, high intensity workout and weight workout and a bunch of other stuff because you were just fixated on that all day long. Like, it was good. You did the right thing, but you were basically working on that for 6 straight hours. And it's like, that will wear you out. And so it's like, trying to take my own advice here. I too was kind of being hard on myself. And then it's like, well, yeah, you have a right and B, a good reason to be this tired. Like you were physically working all day. I also cooked dinner that day. Like you were working all day long. And it's like,
yeah, when was it? The last day I think it was on Friday. Mike, my handyman, was in and finishing some stuff up, and he's just like, yeah, I got to go to a CrossFit class. Like, after this, he had to like run a CrossFit class. And I talked to him the next day. I was like, did you get there in time? He's like, yeah, I did. I got there like 3 minutes to spare and did some weight training and did some this dude is like ridiculously yoked too. Like him, and he brought over another buddy who was kind of a little guy but a big guy. Like, he was probably about 5'6", but fucking just ripped as hell. And he's just like, yeah, man, I mean, I work here. I do this every day. I was like, God, dude, I work one day with you and I have to go lay down for the rest of the day because my job is sending emails. So it's not building kitchen islands. So, it's that's kind of what ends up happening.
It's funny for me because that's happened to me before where we've gone through periods at the studio installing stuff where it's like, I come into work, I don't have an email job, but I have a sit at the computer job most of the time. But then, like, I'll spend a day when I ride my bike in, and then all I do the whole time is like move stuff. Or like Tom was helping me and Milo one day when we were installing acoustic panels. In one instance, we were installing them into a fucking concrete ceiling, and so it was just like heavy drilling and then lifting and putting things in place and stuff like that. And we managed to get I've already forgotten the name, but it's a heavier kind of drill that uses a different kind of like a kind of clamp tooth mechanism to hold the bit in place. It's not like your standard, just like DeWalt drill where you screw it in and out. Like, it's got a certain kind of bit fitting. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's a key bit, but I really can't remember. And it looks like a fucking submachine gun. It's a big drill, and it absolutely does the job for getting through concrete. But like, we only got to the conclusion that we needed that drill by trying it with the regular DeWalt, and at a certain point it's like, this is not fucking working. Like, I was using like the tiny masonry bit, and then use a slightly bigger one, and then a slightly bigger one, and a slightly bigger, and it got to the point where like it took me like an hour to make one hole that could fit the bracket, and or rather the anchor bolt, and the drill couldn't go deep enough to actually get it all the way. And I was like, this is fucking stupid. I'm sorry, like we've got to figure something else out. And then so once we got the drill, it was fine. It worked. It was super quick work. But it's just a reminder that like, yeah, like that guy, your handyman, he does this all the time, so he can like, he's not as smoked from this work when he's done. He can go and like do a weight workout, but also like he doesn't smoke himself doing stupid shit the way that we do, because we don't do this for a living.
No. And I try to. I have like a little weight set in my office, but like the last couple of weeks have been super busy, just at my regular job. And you know, I built the I helped build the kitchen, so I count that as part of my exercise as well. But you know, again, it was hard to get that shit started, and now it's mostly done. It's more than halfway done. All the hard shit's done. The countertops are in. And that's what's really important. And my sink works. 2 months, man. From December 23rd up until February, I'm going to say 24th. 2 months of not having a functional kitchen because lead pipe collapsed on me. And I had to get all that shit taken care of. And so now we are where we are. It cost a whole lot of money. So patreon.com, hell of a way to die.
Yeah, man. We're the builders. The builders that are doing the work for us right now are people that our landlady hired, because obviously she owns the place and we don't. But today they were working on both fixing the fucked up plumbing that caused, long-term listeners of the show may remember me telling the story of the fucked up plumbing emergency. That was in December 2021. It's only getting fixed now. But they also were working on the radiators to see what was going on with the system, because there's something wrong with the pressure and various things. And I think the system needs like a really serious flush, among other things. But today, this is a milestone. The radiator in the upstairs bathroom got slightly warm. Now, slightly warm is not hot the way it's supposed to, but I've got to say this, it has not warmed up ever since we moved in November 2019. So we have had a fucking cold bathroom the whole time, and thankfully, finally, they're getting the work done. I think they'll be able to fix it. But
I mean, culturally, the English are into that, so...
Well, there's a thing in this country about places. Yeah, being miserable is definitely a thing too. But there's also a thing too here where like depending on how responsive your system is, some people like if they don't turn central heating on, they'll either, I've seen it done before where they'll leave the heating on, but like they'll have all the radiators switched off and they'll just turn on the one in the room they're in. I do think there's an extent to which people try to make a sport out of. I think I talked about this on the most recent Lines Led by Donkeys that we recorded when we were asked the question, what as an immigrant to a new country has surprised you? Because of the way it works in America, both because like, well, our houses are insulated. I'm not going to say they're better built than British houses. I mean, I think they're both shitty in their own way. It's just that British houses by and large are not insulated, or if they are, they're insulated badly. And most American houses in most of the country are in climates where if it gets too hot or too cold, bad things can happen. Now, obviously, a significant chunk of Americans don't have air conditioning, but I would venture that fewer Americans don't have heat. It's pretty common to need heat in America. And because of the fact that our houses are typically timber frame construction and they have fiberglass insulation in those gaps, basically, and then they drywall over it, that puts you in a situation where, you can, that doesn't mean that utilities are cheap, that heat or, electric or gas are cheap in America, but like it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to keep your house warm the way it does in Britain right now, because our utility bills have gone through the ceiling. But the point I'm trying to make is that like, I've lived in so many places where like your house will become damaged if you don't heat it continuously. Like your pipes will freeze, stuff will burst, stuff will be seriously damaged. And because it doesn't get that cold here that often, it's more like you're going to be miserable, but it's not like you're going to wake up and, there's like the footage that was being shared in Texas when they had that winter storm where like a pipe burst above your ceiling. And so like your ceiling fan is just dumping water out of it. That doesn't really happen here except in like serious emergencies, and it's rare. Whereas like you have to have the heat on. And so that's a thing that I've noticed that like is always kind of a shock here culturally, is that like there's kind of a culture of like, oh, I don't turn my heat on, or I only turn it on the coldest days, or I only heat the room I'm in, or whatever. And it's like, for us, I think for one, our houses, like British houses, are just drafty. in many cases, I read something recently that said that Victorian houses were actually designed to be drafty so they could let out all of the pollutants from burning coal or burning town gas or stuff like that.
Oh yeah, my old Victorian had a chandelier that was a gasolier. It was electric and gas at the same time,
wow.
so you could just have open flames inside of your house to keep things lit.
And so, yeah, as I understand it, like these houses, many of the old houses were built to be as drafty as possible because they wanted to ventilate. And so, like culturally, man, that's one of those things in this country that I'll just never get over is like, I just, you grew up in America, like unless you're in a situation where you have to keep things at a bare minimum, like, you setting the temperature just warm enough to stop the pipes from freezing because you're trying to save money. Like most people in the winter, they have the heat on and it's central heat. It's typically forced air unless you're in an old building and it's radiators. In some places it's like baseboard heating. I remember in Alaska, anywhere there was a window, there was also an electric baseboard heater underneath it. Or some people, have forced air with gas. I think you tell me, man, there's definitely forced air electric heat too, isn't there? Have you experienced that? I think there is. Yeah. And so like, that's just, it's so much more common in America. And so like, I don't know. I will never get used to the idea of like, no, I should just be cold all the fucking time in my house.
The British, nobody understands them. I don't even think the British understand themselves. So, Nate, let's change gears a little bit. We've got some military stuff to talk about. Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Not military so much as military culturally adjacent, because longtime listeners of this show will know that we are not big fans of Black Rifle Coffee Company because, for one, their coffee is bad, but for another, like everything about their sort of marketing strategy has been to kind of play up a really stupid sort of stereotype vet bro shit thing. And, they tend to engage in dumb culture war stuff, being like anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant, and like trying to troll Starbucks and accuse Starbucks of hiring ISIS when Starbucks said it was going to hire immigrants. And it's like, they're just dumb pieces of shit, and everything about their whole ethos is stupid. And so we've never softened on our line that they're the coffee company for pogues and they suck. However, they're everywhere, and they went public. And as a result, like I saw their coffee being sold on the shelves in Walmart when I was there back in Indiana in January. But they've gotten into some trouble.
There is a display at the last Bass Pro that I went to as well. They are kind of ubiquitous as a patriotic. If you're going to do patriotic coffee, I guess you're going to get Black Rifle and their Sniper Smooth.
They're basically like the coffee company for people who drive $100,000 lifted trucks that they don't use for truck stuff.
But however, they had the problem though when Kyle Rittenhouse was wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not into that. We don't like that he's doing that. We don't support because they were trying to be somewhat legitimate. So they're like, oh well, we're going to have a cleaner face of the company and not be into this dude that gunned down two people at a protest. And of course, all the people with the $100,000 lifted trucks were just like, I don't love the freedoms. Where's the freedoms? Where's the guns?
Yeah.
So they're not like people like us obviously don't like them, but they've also lost like the fashy contingency of people.
the hardcore Trump QAnon people have disavowed them to some extent, and so now they basically just they have to try to convince normal coffee drinkers to drink their shit, and also your garden variety middle of the road Republican voters, if such a thing exists anymore, because everything's gone so stupid and insane. So there's two lawsuits, because I had heard that there was a lawsuit and that one of them involves an accusation of sexual harassment. However, when I Googled this, I actually discovered there's another lawsuit where Black Rifle Coffee Company has, according to the terms of this, or the legal filings, has not honored its obligation to pay millions of dollars. So basically, the summarized version of this is that they were in the process of making canned beverages, like bringing, rather they did this, they brought Black Rifle coffee in like drinkable from a can beverages that they could sell on shelves, but they did this using some relationships, getting deals signed with companies that do the packaging, the storage, et cetera, the prep, the people that supply the milk. And they apparently have not paid, I think it's like $4 million that they are apparently in the hole for. And it's like, this doesn't surprise me, but it's also very funny because they are, when they went public, that kind of implies that they got an injection of cash because, they were suddenly listed, and typically that process, when a company goes public and people are allowed to, buy shares and whatnot, like that does give money to the company. And so whatever their cash flow situation is, I don't know. But they definitely are not doing great in terms of their bottom line if they are failing to pay their bills. Similarly, in Utah, the Evan Haffer, the CEO of Black Rifle Coffee Company, is being sued by a former employee, basically because of accusations of sexual harassment. Now, I won't read these out in detail, but as I understand it, in a summarized version of the allegations, and I have to specify, obviously, that these are allegations of a lawsuit, one of the employees beat Evan Haffer in a handgun shooting match while, on like a sort of off-site day. And
like a week after he got hired. So he gets hired on July 17th, and on July 30th, he takes part in a shooting match and wins.
He wins.
Okay.
So according to the allegations, Mr. Haffer felt like his reputation as an excellent shooter among the military special forces community was threatened by Mr. Roper when other military competitors heard the results. So Mr. Roper was then literally like within a week was forced to strip to his underwear and participate in a quote marketing video unquote where his image was digitally altered to look like he was naked. Mr. Roper, as it says here, was not given any opportunity to refuse to participate in this video and felt like had he refused to participate, he would have lost his job. In the video, he's asked to pretend to do sit-ups in a room with various other men who are allegedly having a hot dog party. The video was meant to poke fun at homosexuals, and Mr. Roper participated in the video against his will as a condition of his employment. The video has been seen by thousands of persons on the internet, much to Mr. Roper's embarrassment and humiliation.
Yeah, and so also let's be sure that this is specifically, they're like, hey, we're gonna make fun of gay people with this. Come on over.
Exactly.
So they're already huge pieces of shit. And yes, this is 2016, but like just because you go public and you try to clean up your image, obviously doesn't mean you're not a huge piece of shit anymore.
Apparently, I'll summarize this. I won't go into detail, but there is a thing where whether jokingly or not, Evan Haffer apparently took all his clothes off and sexually propositioned Mr. Roper. Apparently, Evan Haffer started calling Mr. Roper a mountain Jew because he's Mormon, which makes no fucking sense to me. But okay, I guess because he was Mormon, he decided to call him a mountain Jew. Like, what? I
feel like that is a slur, but not for Mormons. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. It's for Hazars. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea what the fuck it is. Honestly, man, it's such a strange. Anyway, this guy's insane. Basically, on a long enough timeline, this guy was within the year. Like, so remember, this shooting competition happened at the end of July. This guy started in the middle of July, and even by the end of the year, there were just problems. On a long enough timeline, this got to the point where this guy basically claimed that he was, like literally suffering depression, and he wound up getting demoted, and basically like he was terminated without cause in March 2017. He says that
he was moved. Yeah, he was moved out of working HR because he kept, reporting HR violations. And they're like, well, rather than, change the way we do things, we're just going to fire the guy who's complaining a bunch. That doesn't work, usually.
It says, he was basically taunted for not being enough of like a sexual dirtbag to these guys' likings. And then also, he said was more or less muscled out because he told them to stop doing HR violations, and they didn't, as the lawsuit alleges, they didn't want to change their culture. And so these are just a couple of things. This does go on for a while, but obviously, like, At one
And I
point,
wouldn't. I was
go
going to
ahead,
say, I won't be surprised to see more of these coming out in the next couple months.
yeah, apparently Evan Haffer at one point contacted him after he had quit or he'd been fired and said that he would destroy any business that you were a part of. He
Well, he has blocked me on Twitter now, so he's not destroying our business.
he shall not. He basically he claims that that his social media profile was hacked and they were using it to try to reach out to former Black Rifle Coffee Company employees. But anyway, on a long enough timeline, this starts to sound pretty fucking bad. And I think the thing that really surprised me was finding this link. I I found it on Reddit, and one of the Reddit comments was like, yeah, this Evan Haffer came in and was trying to get like an employee discount for our gym and was a dickhead. Like he was trying to get something, negotiate something for his employees to come to our gym and was just a huge asshole. And it's just like, I don't know, man. The degree to which so much of this all seems to hinge on this guy, this one guy, and like the dudes he hires being his like inner circle, being so hung up on having to prove that they're badasses all the time to the detriment of literally their own bottom line. Like it would be fun. Okay, all right. It's funny. I'm sorry that this guy was treated badly, and it's horrifying. Like I didn't read some of the details because they're bad enough that I don't want someone who's just like, perhaps absentmindedly listening to this podcast to like have to, encounter something that's like without being like, hey, just FYI, we're going to talk about like, a pretty gross sexual harassment. But I'm just going to say this, like the degree to which these guys have fucked their bag so much because they can't stop being like this, that is kind of funny. And it's like, you can call it if you want to call
syndrome,
it. Yeah, it is Elon Musk syndrome. And like, I think that you'd be fair in saying that this is like, if you needed a textbook example of what you would call toxic masculinity. Like, here is this guy it's probably going to cost him a fuckload of money because he couldn't get over the fact that a dude was better at shooting than he was. That's it. That's it. Like, he literally he launched a years-long campaign of being like, I'm going to invent homophobia too, just to own this guy because this guy was better at shooting a handgun than he was.
And like, I hope, if something like this is going to be your response, I hope it's in the employee handbook that you're not allowed to like outshoot the CEO at the competition, because it sounds like this guy's hired and then 2 weeks later they're like, oh, you know how to shoot, why don't you come out and shoot with us, we're having a friendly competition, and then wins, and everybody like, normally for me, if it was my company, I'd be like, oh, that's really cool, congratulations, new guy, Deadeye, that's what we're gonna name him, not Mountain Dew. I'd call him Deadeye.
Yeah, that's way really less fucked racist. Up. Yeah, it sounds way more normal to just be like, oh, that's cool. But like, see, we recruit the best, right. And it's just like, what?
Right, but I don't have ego about that shit anymore. You got to kill your ego. That's the other dad lesson for today. Kill your fucking ego, because otherwise shit like this happens and you see what happens. Like, same thing with Elon Musk. Like, buying something and grinding it into the ground because you want people to like you, or you need clout, or somebody did something better and another guy might make fun of you about it. And, that's just being unable to internalize and deal with something like that. That's where you get this shit.
It's so strange, dude. It's so strange. And I have to be honest, like, we talked about Grunt Style and experiencing similar things where there were allegations of abuse from former employees, about the utterly toxic workplace culture, the like open hostility, misogyny, sexism, homophobia, like substance abuse, and just generally being bad at your job. And it's really, really funny. I feel bad for the people who suffer, but like, I gotta be honest with you, I was never going to be the kind of guy who wants to buy fucking patriotic coffee or some dumb bullshit like that. But like, even if you had done that in a way where you were obviously grifting off of, MAGA people or fucking flag fuckers, like, you don't have to be this much of a loser. Like, I've had this guy's number for a while, metaphorically speaking. He's just a fucking loser. That's all he is. Like, he's so hung up on, I don't even know, like, trying to make sure that literally every single person who ever encounters like the fucking, even comes within like touching distance of him knows he was a Green Beret and that he's fucked hot chicks. Like, it's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
It's a power thing.
And also, like, the idea that the worst thing on earth to you is being gay. It's like,
right,
bro, sort out your own fucking problems.
Right. Like, it's again, like I said, it's a power thing. Like, nobody likes Ron DeSantis. Nobody likes Ted Cruz. If you talk to anybody who's like, no, I know Ted Cruz, I went to school with him. Here's a huge fucking asshole. Jasper Craven has a really good long form thing about DeSantis and his time in the military and down in Guantanamo. And a lot of people are just like, yeah, DeSantis, he's a huge fucking asshole and nobody liked him. But they don't care because it's all about the power and the wealth. And so Black Rifle Coffee Company, he built this up and he created this and he started to create an empire. You know, Black Rifle has its own news website called Coffee or Die, and it's got a podcast, and it's got, you know, they're trying to be like the military Barstool Sports, I kind of feel. And it's all really kind of, it all falls flat, I guess. I've read some of the stuff. I haven't listened to their podcast because I don't hate myself.
I was going to say, like, it's like, good job doing like a Barstool Sports sexual harassment allegations speed run without actually making the money that they do.
Yeah, you've done exactly what everybody else did, and now the only people who like you are the biggest dipshits in the world. But to be fair, much like Elon Musk, that's what he's into. He doesn't care if you're a smart person that likes him. He just cares that you're a sycophant. So, in a perfect world, this guy would, you know, get dragged down the street by a horse or something. But we don't live in a just society. I doubt anything's really going to happen other than
But it wouldn't be like a torture thing. He'd be dragged down the street by a horse because he was trying to flash his ass at someone and he fell off the horse.
Right. He was he was on the horse showing his dick to somebody and the reins wrapped around his dick and he fell off. And, you know, purely accidental.
You'd be amazed how often this happens. I mean, it's just a genuine risk people face.
Getting your dick ripped off by a horse.
So with that being said, Francis, you have been soliciting people's questions for Ask a Dad, and so we're going to answer some.
Yes, we got a couple of them. I don't know how some of them we did talk a little bit on the last one, but one big one is a DIY home hacks. And we, you know, as you just said, you know, the sometimes you just got to hire a guy to come take care of your nonsense. Personally, I would say that you should make sure that you have a good set of tools. You know, screwdriver, hammer, a small wrench or socket sets, because everything that's small that needs to be fixed can be fixed with things like that. So that would be my, you know, just and YouTube. I learned so much shit on YouTube.
Yeah. I did it wrong for a very long time before I learned how to do things right by just watching contractors and builders who show you how to do stuff on YouTube. It's not I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, suspend a fucking vat of mercury over your newborn's cradle because you fucking learned how to do it on YouTube. But you know what I mean? For basic stuff where it's relatively low risk, it's just an annoyance you want to solve. Yeah, YouTube's great.
Right. Keep the mercury in the basement is what we're saying.
Yeah, I would say for my toolkit, like I would say of the things that I use the most, this is kind of funny. Obviously, you know, your garden variety hammer and nails. I definitely think a thing that was a hack that I didn't understand until, and this is stupid and embarrassing, but just like having the right drill bits makes such a difference for wood, for drywall, for masonry. And I would say the thing that feels to me like irreplaceable, and in the sense of how often I use it, is a level. A good level is worth its weight in gold. Like,
yeah,
I always take level measurements. I always measure like multiple. It's measure twice, cut once, but I probably measure 10 times because I always make mistakes. And man, a level will save your ass. So definitely appreciate that. And I guess the only other hack that I have for home maintenance stuff, you'd be surprised. Like as Francis was saying, you know, it's pretty easy between YouTube and just sort of like, I'll call it a little bit of common sense, but like I installed when we talked about last week, the bidet toilet seats in New York. I had one that plugged in that had a heater and all that stuff. And it was really simple to do. And it just came down to knowing the basics of how to turn the water off at the pipe connections for your toilet, like where there's the valve, and then having a wrench that you could use to, I think it was with a wrench, but it might've literally been hand tight or like a washer to remove the connection and then put this. You basically had like a valve, a kind of a feed pipe that connected and then was a coupler. And, that way you then connected your water line to this that could then feed water into the toilet seat. And then it then continued onward into the regular connection to fill the tank. And that kind of stuff I find pretty simple, but it's really just like having the right tools to do it, in the sense that you can use a monkey wrench to do the task that a socket wrench could do much faster. You'll get it done, but it'll waste a lot of time and be exhausting and annoying. Like, if you have a measured wrench set, like, and a socket wrench would be inappropriate because it's too much torque or you can't fit it and that kind of a thing. I don't know. There are some times when you need one, and that, like, on a bike, for example, like you have typically you have a wrench set that's different sizes for different lug nuts that you can then, tighten by hand. But man, like, installing a TV mount when you have to use socket bolts, like, it's so nice to just have like either like a socket wrench set, or in my case, you have the wrench set, but then you also have socket, like an adapter that lets you use your drill. When I put together our weight bench, I had to put a bunch of bolts in, and I could have done it by hand. It would have taken forever, and it probably would have rattled like shit. But having that socket wrench set that also had an adapter for I can't remember the name for the object that goes in where the drill bit connects into the drill, but then like it lets you mount it. That thing it's worth its weight in gold. So wonderful stuff.
Yeah. Somebody also did mention, if you have a toilet that's constantly running, it's wasting a lot of water. But all the guts inside of the toilet, like, you can go to your local Home Depot or Lowe's and you can find the float and all the stuff to put in there, and it's very, very simple to
and they're typically like, plastic and like snap in, or they have like, it's very obvious how to mount them. And if your toilet's running a lot,
there hasn't been innovation in the way water moves through pipes. We've been basically doing it the same way since the Roman aqueducts.
I will say that the floats have gotten better, and the stuff being plastic means that like they're often cheaper. I don't necessarily know if they last any longer or if they last less long than metal ones would, but I would say that all the times I've had to replace parts in a toilet, like, they've been pretty cheap.
The wax ring, I've had to replace the wax ring. That's like $20, when it's
wax ring's an annoying one because it smells, but yeah.
Plumbing is one of those things that, like, there's a couple of things that you can get it just good enough, like the wax ring, because it's thick enough that, like, as long as you seat the toilet back onto the wax ring properly, and the wax ring is like where your toilet connects to the hole.
We talked
in the
about
floor
it pretty recently. It basically forms a nice seal to prevent sewer fumes from leaking out from your toilet, the black water pipe connection, seeping out underneath the porcelain. So it forms an airtight seal. But yeah, for instance, was that the only question, or was there another one?
There's a couple of them. We're gonna do this one. What's your favorite dad joke?
Oh, Francis, you got to go first. I have to think.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, there's a lot of just like. It depends on what you think a dad joke is. If you're asking me to be sarcastic in some way, there's a lot of different ones. But one of my favorite jokes has always been a grasshopper walks into a bar. And the bartender says, "Hey, we got a drink named after you." And the grasshopper says, "Really? You got a drink named Steve?" And it's absurd. That's what I love about it. Talking grasshoppers named Steve.
I don't have one. My brother has this elaborate joke that everyone hates, and I suppose that's the closest thing, where it's like this long sort of almost like Bildungsroman about like the guy who's humiliated by a clown as a child, so he decides to become the world's greatest clown and tell the world's greatest joke that will defeat this clown and humiliate him. And so you have this huge, long, incredible long setup for all the things that he does to prepare. And then when he finally encounters this clown at like a clown competition, he delivers the great joke. And the payoff after all this preparation is he delivers this joke, which is, "Fuck you, clown!" And that's it. Like, people either laugh or they fucking hate it. That's not really a dad joke, though, because you can't swear in front of kids, otherwise they'll start swearing all the time.
I did hit one of my specialists when I was in Iraq. I got back from the barber, and he said, "Oh, hey, Sergeant Horton, you got a haircut?" And I said, "Nope, I got them all cut." And he stopped for a minute and then just laughed for like 3 minutes straight because he had never heard that joke before.
Oh, I actually just reminded me because I told it to myself literally because it's so much of a dad joke. I have a Garmin watch, and I was charging it, and while I was doing some cleaning work on the weekend, I was like, "Man, what fucking time is it?" And I looked and I turned my wrist like I would, and the watch wasn't on. And I just said, "Oh, it's 1/4 past a freckle." And I said a dad joke to myself in a room by myself.
Nate, when you and I met up, it was so hard for when you got out of the car for me not to just go, well, looks like they let anybody come to the Eugene V. Debs Museum in Terre Haute, Indiana, exactly.
Huh? I think they actually will.
Let anybody in here.
They'll just let anyone here. Yep. Here comes trouble. Well, Francis, thanks again for a great episode. Friends of the show, listeners, people who, if you enjoy this, in the show notes, there is a link to our Patreon. We have bonus episodes going all the way back to 2017, and $5 a month gets you every episode that's ever been released. We typically put out 3 per month, so there's a lot out there.
Yeah, we got the store. I'm starting to make buttons now, which basically is, at this point, has been a whole lot of Deep Space Nine jokes and a couple of military jokes. However, I am working on a Starship Troopers button, too. So if you guys are into that, hellofawaytodie.com. We got everything there. And I'm going to be answering dad questions there as well. I'm trying to get back into, social media has destroyed websites. So I'm trying to undestroy websites one at a time by writing on it and then posting about it to social media, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how the internet works anymore, man.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't even want to. I certainly don't want to know how TikTok works. So you know what? We'll just call it at that. But thank you so much for listening. And Francis, I'll speak to you soon.